Hey y'all, what's up? I hope you are well. My name is Patricia, your born and raised small town girl, here to remind you that the unthinkable can happen anywhere. Welcome back, guys, and if you are here for the first time, welcome. I am so glad you are here. Today, after way too long of a delay, we are covering the third part in our Route 29 series about young women who disappeared near Route 29 in Virginia. But first, I want to apologize for such a long delay in releasing the third part. I have to be honest, I was struggling with how to put this case and the next case together to tell you guys about it properly. These two cases are connected in a way that I wouldn't have been able to release one without researching them both. And to be even more honest, this led me to questioning my ability to do this podcast, and I unfortunately allowed the negative thoughts to prevail for a little bit. My bad. However, I have decided not to let my negative thoughts win this battle. Raising awareness that you can be in just as much danger in small town America as you can be in a big city is important, in my opinion. These stories deserve to be told, and sometimes they are ignored. So I hope you guys can forgive me for the unplanned hiatus, and I thank you so very much for still being here, and I will do better in the future. Now that I explained that, let's get to the case. October 17, 2009, 20-year-old Morgan Dana Harrington was trying on outfits in front of the mirror in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house. Her mom was sitting on her bed chatting with her and helping her decide what she should wear for her night out to see Metallica in concert. She was super excited for this concert. The tickets that her father had bought her as a gift had been hanging on her parents' refrigerator for months. After 3 outfit changes, she chose a Pantera shirt, a black miniskirt, black leggings, and black boots, which is the perfect outfit for a concert like this. When heading to her car to leave, she told her mom 241, their family version of I love you. It means I love you too much, forever, and once more. And I just love that. Morgan was on her way to her apartment, which she shared with her best friend Amy, to pick her up for the concert. Once she picked Amy up, the two of them were going to JMU in Harrisonburg, Virginia, to pick up 2 more of their friends before making their way to the John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville, Virginia for the concert. During the band's opening act, Morgan told her friends she was going to the bathroom and would be back. Her friends said that she had been drinking, but that she wasn't like crazy drunk. At 8:48 p.m., her friends realized Morgan had been gone too long for just going to the bathroom, so they called her cell phone. This is when Morgan told them she was outside the arena and that security at the door had informed her there was a no re-entry policy, meaning she couldn't go back in after exiting. Her friends offered to come out with her, but she told them to stay for the concert and that she would find a ride home. I find this weird. She was in Charlottesville, Virginia, but she lived near Virginia Tech, which is a good 2.5 hours away. Not only that, they drove Morgan's car to the concert, but her friend had the keys since Morgan had been drinking. Even more weird is how she ended up outside when she was just going to the bathroom, especially since there are 18 clearly marked bathrooms in the John Paul Jones Arena. I also think it's strange that her friends didn't just run her keys to the door so she could have just hung out in the car until the end of the concert. But they didn't do that. And by the time the concert was over, Morgan was nowhere to be found. Even though she couldn't be found, for some reason, her friends left her in her car and didn't inform anyone. They said it was normal for Morgan to wander off and show back up the next day, so I'm assuming they thought she found a way home, maybe? Sunday morning after the concert, Morgan's father was expecting her to come back to their house. They had plans to balance her checkbook and for him to help her with some math homework, but instead, he received a call from the University of Virginia police saying that a lacrosse player had found Morgan's purse and turned it into them. Dan Harrington, Morgan's father, said he thought this was strange, but told himself maybe she dropped it when she was getting in the car or something, you know? However, Jill Harrington, Morgan's mother, said she immediately knew something was wrong. She said it was one of those moments when you know your world is about to be flipped upside down. This led Dan and Jill to contact Morgan's friends to see if they could locate her. Her friends informed them that they hadn't seen her since the middle of the concert. This bothers me. Why didn't they call when they couldn't find her after the concert? When her friends were calling her and trying to find her after the concert, they should have contacted her parents then, in my opinion. I understand that they said she tended to wander off, but to leave her own car and not be reachable at all seems like when you should be worried. I am not trying to blame them, but I am saying I think that was a mistake on their part. I also think it was a mistake on their part that they left her outside at the concert and did not go out with her. Or like I said, at least get her the keys to the car, where she could have just hung out until the end of the concert. Like, she could have just sat in there and listened to music or something, she would have been safe. I'm not trying to bash them at all. That's just my opinions and what I think I would do if I was in that situation. Once the Harringtons realized that no one knew where Morgan was, they called the university police back to let them know that she was missing. Thankfully, the university police took it seriously right away. They began searching the area around the arena, asking for witnesses to come forward and searching for any CCTV video footage. When searching the area where Morgan's purse was found, they found her cell phone. But her cell phone had the battery removed and the battery was nowhere to be found. Witness statements began building a timeline, but it wasn't making a lot of sense. A witness said that she saw Morgan in the bathroom in the arena and that she had fallen. The witness stated that she was a nurse, so she assisted Morgan in cleaning up a gash that was on her chin. She said that Morgan seemed to be pretty disoriented. If this witness's statement is true and it was Morgan in the bathroom, that means she did make it to the bathroom. It also means she went from being not too intoxicated to visibly inebriated in a very short time. It makes me question why the nurse left her in the bathroom if she was that disoriented. Could the fall have given her a concussion, which led to her not thinking straight? Could she have wanted to step outside to get some air because she was hurt and not feeling well, not knowing she wouldn't be able to get back in? Other witnesses said they saw her in the parking lot and that she was acting erratically and seemed to be incapacitated. Several witnesses claimed that they offered to help her in the parking lot, but she refused their help. 2 more witnesses said they saw her outside of the arena walking with 3 men. Another group of witnesses reported seeing Morgan hitchhiking on the Copley Bridge just near the arena. However, Morgan's mom said this would be completely out of character for her and that she would not do that. That makes me wonder if Morgan was trying to hail a cab. And we will come back to cabs and the possibility of her trying to hail a cab next week. Norma Parson, who was delivering newspapers early Sunday morning to the UVA campus area, said that around 3:45 a.m. she saw Morgan walking with 3 men at the West Mall opening to the campus. She said she called the tip line several times but wasn't taken seriously. The police said her tip was taken seriously, but it couldn't be corroborated. But it is a little strange that more than one witness said they saw Morgan with 3 men, and then Norma Parson said the same thing about 3 men. By Monday, October 19th, the police decided to issue a press release appealing to the public for any information on Morgan's whereabouts. The Harringtons spoke at the conference pleading for Morgan to come home and for whoever had her to release her. They spoke about how out of character this type of behavior was for Morgan. Dan Harrington said, quote, "Morgan is a pretty transparent kid who's had a really close relationship with us. I don't think there's a lot of secret, so this kind of behavior is not something I think we would expect." End quote. Also at this press conference, Lieutenant Joe Rader said there was no evidence of a crime being committed. And I hate it when police do this, when a woman goes missing. It's pretty obvious she hasn't contacted anyone in over 24 hours, and her phone was found without the battery. Obviously something isn't right. But when asked about the phone, Lieutenant Rader said it wasn't unusual for her phone to be found without a battery. What? What? What do you mean it's not unusual for a phone to just be laying in a field without a battery? Like, that is so weird to me. Metallica reached out to the Harringtons and posted a message to their fans on their website asking for any videos, pics, or info their fans who were at the concert might have. They also donated $50,000 to the reward that the Harringtons had gathered with friends and family, bringing the reward for the safe return of Morgan to $150,000. The Harringtons also launched a website, findmorgan.com, with photos of Morgan, downloadable flyers, and personal messages. Their community was gathering around them. Hundreds of people showed up at Northside High School in Roanoke, Virginia, where Morgan studied her junior year for a vigil to pray for Morgan's safe return. On November 6th, the Laura Recovery Center organized a huge search effort where 1,667 people registered to help search for Morgan over a 3-day period. A SWAT team that was in town training also join the search effort. They were even joined by Ed Smart, Elizabeth Smart's father. I have to say I really love how families who have been through these type of horrific events will always show up to help. The group combed over nearly 2,600 acres. Unfortunately, nothing was found that offered any answers on where Morgan was. Investigators didn't have much to go on until a UVA student called police on November 11, 2009, saying he believed he found Morgan's Pantera shirt outside of his dorm. It was neatly placed on a bush. He told officers when he went to class that morning the shirt was not there. Jill Harrington said she felt this was a way for whoever took Morgan to present a trophy, and it does kind of seem that way. Obviously, it was placed there since it wasn't there that morning, and that area had been searched previously. The shirt was sent off to Richmond for forensic testing. Hairs were recovered and mitochondrial DNA was used to prove it was Morgan's shirt. The shirt also showed a small amount of blood that was said to belong to an unknown male. While the investigators and the Harringtons worked relentlessly to try to figure out where Morgan was, the internet exploded with theories. They speculated that Morgan was involved in a romantic relationship she didn't want anyone to know about, so she ran off with this person. Others said they believed Morgan was somewhere suffering from amnesia because of the witness who claimed she had fell. Psychics claimed they had dreams about vehicles, license plates, and dates. Some even said that they dreamt that Morgan was alive but was too embarrassed to come forward. It seemed as if the internet had a theory for everything. I couldn't imagine being Morgan's parents and dealing with this type of craziness on top of not knowing where your child is. The Harringtons were doing everything they could to keep Morgan's name in the media and in the front of everyone's mind. They attended rallies. They even went on the Today Show and Dr. Phil to share Morgan's story. Every time they spoke about her, they hoped someone would come forward with more info on where Morgan was. Unfortunately, they would get more info 101 days after Morgan went missing. January 26, 2010. A farmer checking fencing on his 742-acre farm about 10 miles from the arena found remains on his property. He said at first he thought that it was a deer carcass, but once he got closer, he saw clothes and jewelry. He called the police immediately. This farm is very remote and not easily accessible. It is an area someone would have to have prior knowledge of. It's about 1.5 miles from road access, over creeks, ravines, and fences. The farm owner, David Bass, said that he had lived on that farm for 30 years and had only been to that area maybe twice a year. 2 days later, dental records confirmed the remains were Morgan Harrington. Dan Harrington said, quote, "It's the worst thing you don't want to hear, yet at the same time, it's what I expected. And there was some relief she wasn't missing anymore. The missing is the worst," end quote. I truly cannot imagine the pain the Harringtons had to be experiencing at this point, and I can see how he would feel that way. Crime scene texts swept the area. Now that this was a homicide investigation, they needed as much evidence as they could find. They didn't release much about what evidence they found. However, they did release that they found dog fur on Morgan that was not a match for their family dog. This will come back as pertinent evidence next week. Authorities wouldn't release a cause of death, but the Harringtons disclosed her death was very violent, with several broken bones, and that she was sexually assaulted. Dr. Kevin Whaley performed the autopsy where his findings were homicidal violence of an undetermined origin. Morgan had a spiral fracture of her upper arm, 2 rib fractures, and an incised fracture in her skull. He released his determination that her death was homicide on February 2, 2010. Morgan Dana Harrington was born on July 24, 1989. She had a brother named Alex. It seems like they were very close. Her parents had careers within the medical field. Jill was an oncology nurse, and Dan was a dean of academic affairs at Carilion School of Medicine and Research Institute. As a little girl, Morgan loved anything artsy and creative. In school, she was eager to learn. From the time she was 12 until she graduated, she volunteered every summer with Forgotten Victims, a program for kindergarten through 5th grade children who have witnessed violence in their home. She would often let the little girls play with her hair. While attending Northside High School, she was given the opportunity to transfer schools and graduate early because of her intelligence. She took that opportunity and graduated early in 2007 from Lord Botetourt High School near Roanoke, Virginia. She lived with Amy, her best friend since the 6th grade. They both attended Virginia Tech. Morgan was in the early education program, a passion she developed while being a student aide for a special needs classroom. Her apartment was about 45 minutes from where her parents lived. Her parents described her as a homebody, saying she got accepted to both UVA and Virginia Tech, but chose Tech to be closer to home. She loved music. Her mom said it was a thread that ran all through her life. She loved heavy metal music in particular, like Pantera and, of course, Metallica. Her friends said Morgan could change the atmosphere in a room just by entering it. Her father described her as a sweet girl who was as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside. Her mom said Morgan was very fun and, quote, kind of like champagne. Morgan was bubbly and cause for celebration, end quote. What a great way to be described. That is just great. On February 5th, 2010, the family held a memorial at St. Andrew's Church in Roanoke, Virginia. Despite a lot of snow, over 500 people attended. Morgan's ashes were scattered in Outer Banks, where the family vacationed, as well as in a remote spot in the Himalayas. They were carried to the Himalayas by Morgan's college art teacher, who is now a close friend of the family. The Harringtons were committed to keeping Morgan's spirit alive. They helped build a school in Zambia named after Morgan. Jill had traveled to this area several times as a nurse with the Orphan Medical Network International. She said, quote, Morgan intended when she graduated to come to Africa with me with one of her friends. We thought it fitting that though she will not be there, children will be educated in her honor, end quote. They also helped establish a memorial scholarship in Morgan's honor at the Virginia Tech Carilion Medical School. Quote, for us, it's kind of like trumping evil. Her killer doesn't win if we can make it a good thing, end quote. Not only were they committed to keeping Morgan's spirit alive, they were driven by passion to try to prevent this from happening again. They lobbied Congress for more funding for missing person organizations. They appeared at numerous special events, including UVA's annual Take Back the Night rally, and urged UVA administrators to work towards a safer campus. Dan Harrington spoke at the Take Back the Night at UVA, saying, quote, we pray for the day that a young girl does not have to be at risk, is not blamed when they are found the victim, and does not become a statistic, end quote. In 2010, the Harringtons started Help Save the Next Girl, which is a national campaign to educate young women on how to avoid becoming victims. They shared tons of info on how to keep girls safe. Also with this organization, Jill travels to help other victim parents in court and with their funeral cost. In addition, Help Save the Next Girl has ran ad campaigns to encourage safety on campus for girls. Jill said, quote, maybe some girls saw one of those ads and decided to take a friend with her. You drop a seed and you don't know what will germinate and sprout. You just have to keep hope, end quote. Help Save the Next Girl also lobbied Congress for bills like the State Transfer Act, which requires school transcripts to indicate if a student had been expelled for sexual misconduct. Another bill requires expanded use of DNA submission for certain misdemeanors. Jill said if these things would have been in place in 2009, Morgan could still be alive. And just before the 2-year statute of limitations was up in October of 2011, the Harringtons sued Regional Marketing Company, the company that was doing security at John Paul Jones Arena that night, saying they should have noticed she was hurt and needed help. And I have to say that I kind of agree with that. Like, everybody was saying she was so inebriated from the witness statements. Like, why didn't somebody, like, help her or call an ambulance or, like, at least let her back in with her friends? If they would have let her back in, she probably would have still been here. This was a $3.5 million lawsuit. Jill said about the lawsuit, quote, we did not do this lightly. We did it with great trepidation, but I think we can make changes in the world with that funding, and that made it worthwhile. End quote. I tried, but I could not find the outcome of this lawsuit. Maybe it was resolved and sealed or something. I'm not sure, but I couldn't figure out if it had ever been resolved in any way. The murder of such a beautiful young woman with so much to offer this world provoked fear in Charlottesville, a college town that felt like a small town to those who lived there. This made investigators want to give their all to try to find answers to calm the fears. They entered the DNA from the shirt into a DNA database in July of 2010, and it got a hit. Sadly, not a hit on who the DNA belonged to, but a hit that connected another case. It matched to a sexual assault from 2005. The victim's name was never released. She was only referred to as RG, so that is how I will refer to her in this episode and the next. On September 24th, 2005, RG was walking home from the grocery store around 10 p.m. at night when she was grabbed from behind. The attacker dragged her to a nearby area where she was sexually assaulted. He was choking her, but she was fighting back with all of her might. Thankfully, a car passed by that scared him and made him run. When fighting back, RG scratched him, and this provided a DNA profile for the attacker. Poor RG was only 26 and a virgin at the time of this assault. She had just finished graduate school and was about to start a job in the area of Fairfax, Virginia. She was only a few steps from her townhouse. She told police that the attacker had smashed her head on the ground like a, quote, rugged football. RG was able to provide enough info for a sketch to be made. When the DNA hit was matched, investigators in Morgan's case released the sketches that were drawn for RG. Even with this new info and the sketch, it was seeming like the case was growing cold. That was until September 12, 2014, when another young college woman went missing right down the road from where Morgan went missing. Next week, in part 4 of our Route 29 series, I will tell you about this young woman. Her name was Hannah Graham. I will also tell you the outcome of Morgan's story because unfortunately it took years and another young woman going missing for the pieces to finally come together. But before that, I want to share some final thoughts from the Harringtons about how things have been and how they have learned to cope. Jill said the months that Morgan was missing were far worse than the years since her death. Quote, "It's debilitating to try to swing on the pendulum between hope and despair. You want to just sit in mourning because you don't want to quit on your kid. It really is easier to know that your child is dead. It is primitive. Once you have the body, you know that nobody is going to hurt them again." End quote. Morgan's dad spoke about her cell phone. Quote, "I hate AT&T, but they will always have our business." End quote. Her parents call her phone to listen to her voicemail, and it says, "Hi guys, this is Morgan. I can't talk just now, but if you leave me a message, I'll call you as soon as I can." Jill said she always says that she'll get back to us, but never does. Jill also said she has her own way of staying connected to Morgan by using the lotion in Morgan's bathroom sparingly. Quote, "I like to use it because Morgan's hands touched it, but it's almost done. The stuff of Morgan and the things that ran through her hands are fewer and fewer in our lives. The ones that are there we like a lot. We find comfort in them." End quote. She also said, "It's funny where you find comfort. I like to see Morgan's clothes on other people. It lets me know that they think of her when they get up in the morning." Jill said this about giving Morgan's clothes and jewelry to her friends, which I think is really sweet. It's a memorial for them, and it kind of does help Morgan, help her spirit live on. It is evident that Morgan was a very bright star in a world that sometimes doesn't deserve those stars. Quote, "Morgan was a shiny, loving, beautiful, original." End quote. I have so many theories and questions about this case as well as the other two I have covered so far. I am taking notes of them, and I figured after I finish this series, which has 3 more cases, I would do a short episode to tie it all together with my thoughts, and I will discuss if I feel there is really something to the theories that there is a Route 29 stalker, or the theories that there is a bigger organization of people involved in these missing persons and murders. I figured we could just go over all of it and go over the questions and see where our opinion takes us after we have all the information. I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please subscribe so you will be notified when new episodes drop. Also, please give your girl a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. On Instagram and Facebook, it's at This Doesn't Happen Here, and at This Doesn't Happen on TikTok. Also, if you could rate and review the podcast wherever you are listening, that would greatly help the podcast out, and I would appreciate it so much. Until next time, remember, pure evil doesn't have city limits, and this does, in fact, happen here.